Good Monday afternoon to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty to talk about with the Browns and the Cavs. A little later, Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast will join us. We'll talk some Cavs and Browns. We begin by talking Browns and some news with the Browns as David Njoku gets the franchise tag. So it's 10.8, so right around $11 million, and that buys some more time for them to negotiate and come to terms on a long-term contract extension. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Can read them online at brownzone.com. Any surprise to this for you at all, Scott?
Well, I would say we expected it, just talking to Andrew Berry last week and getting the sense that they really wanted to keep David. I think the surprise comes from the fact that, you know, the franchise tag isn't used very often, right? The Browns only used it on Phil Dawson a decade ago twice, and that's the only time they've used it. And it's usually kept for a premium player. And David Njoku just hasn't had premium player stats, right? He's not a Pro Bowl guy. 56 catches, I think, is his best for a season. So that's where the surprise would be. But the fact that they didn't isn't really because it felt like it was trending in that direction.
And, you know, in terms of the money, that's about where they're going to end up paying them anyway. It's kind of the market value for them. So it isn't. Let's look in terms of what may happen now that they are going to pay him $11 million for how many ever years. If they release Austin Hooper, there is a cap savings that would be $9.5 million after June 1st. So if they're going to release Austin Hooper, it will be after June 1st, you would think. And these are all kind of the cap gymnastics that all NFL teams, and especially the Browns, will be going through over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, actually, I think it's 7.5 that they would save if they do post June 1st, not 9.5. But you're just delaying that, right? It's not like they don't have to take that salary cap hit. You just delay it. So you could take $11.25 million right now if you cut him, or if you wait till the post June 1st designation, then it's like 3.5 this year and 7.5 next year. Now the thing is, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of cap hit to take when you just signed a guy a couple of years ago, right? His contract is structured so that the team doesn't cut him and that they pay him the $9.5 million in cash, right? Which they would save $9.5 million in cash. The salary cap hit is different. It's interesting. I'm not convinced that they will cut Austin Hooper. I think they'll try to restructure a deal with him and hope that maybe he takes a pay cut or they can shift money around. Kevin Stefanski uses 2 and 3 tight ends an awful lot. If you got rid of Austin Hooper, you have to go find someone else. So I don't think it's a done deal that he's gone, but you certainly have to keep an eye on what the Njoku tag means to Austin Hooper.
All right, some other news for guys that were tendered contracts. Some lesser names, but some you'll recognize. Jamarcus Bradley, guard Michael Dunn, and offensive lineman Blake Hance. Dunn played a little. Hance played quite a bit. They are restricted free agents that they have tendered contracts to. And again, the lineman, not a surprise at all.
No, this is, these are exclusive rights guys, so there's no penalty to doing it. You just bring them back, and then they're on your 90-man roster. So, Blake Hance played out of position last year at tackle. I think he made 8 starts at tackle. The Browns like him better at guard, but they had to use him at tackle. He has value with that position flexibility. Michael Dunn played a couple games. They like him in the interior. He can play center if you want him to. And then Bradley, we saw bits and pieces of, and we know that the Browns don't have a lot of receivers on the depth chart right now. So I think none of those moves is a surprise.
All right. You came back from the Combine in Indianapolis. A lot that went on there. One of the guys that has been linked to the Browns in some mock drafts, edge rusher George Karlaftis from Purdue. 6'4", 275, gets after it. And when you look at the scouting report on him, good power, relentless motor, keeps the heat on offensive counterparts throughout the game. Pretty much what you want to hear about a edge rusher. And then take a listen to his own scouting report on his game.
relentless, right? That's how I approach life, how I approach the game, in terms of my technique, in terms of how I play, my motor, my effort, everything about it, relentless. I think I compare myself to Khalil Mack. He has that speed to power, so I see a lot of similarity between our games. A little different body types, but I think same way we approach the game. I like to watch T.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, J.J. Watt, Ryan Kerrigan. I mean, the list goes on, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, Scott, if he's one of those guys defensively, yeah, sign me up, even at 13.
Right. Yeah, he was interesting. I stood there for the whole interview, and he definitely has an edge to him. You know, he talked about relentless. That comes across. You know, depending on what they do in free agency, the Browns need a long-term, at least I think, they need a long-term bookend for Myles Garrett. And we haven't seen that really since Myles was drafted in 2017. They've had Olivier Vernon for a couple of years, Emmanuel Ogbah right at the beginning of Myles' career, Jadeveon Clowney last year. I'd like to see him sign or draft a young guy and say, okay, for the next 5 years, this guy's going to be opposite Myles. I think that has the potential to be really exciting. And Karlaftis is part of that group that could be there at 13. I think he's intriguing, a little different style than Myles, right? Myles has a lot of bend. Karlaftis is more power, you know, real strong legs and a strong base. I think he's pretty good against the run, which you need from that other end opposite Myles. So he's definitely in that discussion. And I think there's a possibility, you know, I would think it's receiver at 13, but I certainly would not rule out edge rusher, especially if Clowney does not return.
Now, you also wrote an article why you think he could make a big splash, being Karlaftis in the end. Take us through what you wrote in that and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, he's got an interesting backstory. Like so many of these guys at the combine, you sit there and you listen and you learn stuff about him. He was born in Athens, Greece. His dad was from Greece, came to the U.S. to go to college, met his mom at Purdue or West Lafayette, and then they moved to Greece. And George was born in Greece, stayed there till he was 13, and then his dad died, so his mom moved everybody back home to West Lafayette because that's where her support system was. Had never played football. Picked it up quickly and was physically ahead of everybody else. So, you know, he became good right away. But where he learned a lot of that work ethic and the power in his legs, he was a goalie in water polo. And at 13, he was the goalie for the national under-16 team. And he talked about doing this drill where you tread water as a water polo player, and you had to hold a chair above your head and your shoulders and chest had to be outside of the water. And you had to do it for 5 or 10 minutes. And that's how he built the power. And you can tell that, you know, he didn't lose any of that training when he got here. And he's a gym rat. And he moved across the facility to produce so he could be in the facility day and night. I think he would impress coaches and GMs in the interviews.
Yeah, that does not sound like something I want to even attempt to do, is tread water that sounds like a form of torture. But if you're telling me it makes you a national team water polo goalie, I'll buy it. Another guy that, you know, opened some eyes, Jordan Davis, and you see 6'6", 341, mammoth hands, defensive tackle. Take a look at the comps to Ted Washington. Nose tackle with size, power to clog up and alter an offensive team's desire to run between the tackles, something the Browns could definitely use. But take a look at the 40-yard dash.
Really instinctive.
This is what is frightening. Something that big should not be able to move that fast. A 4.74 for a guy that weighs almost 350 pounds. That's some athleticism right there.
Yeah, that's crazy athleticism. It really is. And it didn't take him a while to get going. Like, he came out of the blocks firing. It's interesting, the Ted Washington comp, you know, I think some people, Browns fans, are probably scarred because Ted wasn't the same player when he finished his career at the Browns, but he was good when he was younger. You know, the Browns need defensive tackles. I wouldn't rule out one completely at 13, but I think it would have to be a defensive tackle that could rush the passer. And I just don't know if he's got it in him. You know, Ted Washington wasn't a pass rusher. You talk about a run plugger. I just don't think there's value in that for the Browns at 13. But if, you know, you looked at his film and you looked at the shuttles and said, hey, this guy has a burst and can get to the quarterback, then it makes it definitely more intriguing.
All right. One of the guys that some people connected the Browns to via trade is Calvin Ridley. That is not likely to happen. He was suspended by the NFL for a year for gambling on NFL games during the season last year. Now, it's important to note he was away from the team reportedly when he was gambling on games away from mental health issues, but he has been suspended for the entire upcoming season for gambling on NFL games. And again, that was a guy that was intriguing as a potential trade target at wide receiver for the Browns.
Yeah, there's no doubt, right? You figure, okay, free agency is different. You might have to overpay, but if you get a guy in a trade, you kind of control things. And he was definitely a guy that I was waiting to see what happened to. And now he's going to be suspended for all of next season. Obviously, the Browns nobody's going to trade for him if he's suspended for all of next year, I wouldn't think. So, yeah, that's big news. It affects the receiver market, which the Browns are paying a lot of attention to. You know, you could have Amari Cooper from Dallas released, which would create another guy out there that I think would interest the Browns. He would interest me compared to some of the other guys out there. But this is, I mean, it's huge news, especially for the NFL. Gambling is so taboo. But we've gotten to the point now where the NFL embraces gambling, except, you know, if you're in the league, and then it remains taboo. And I think this is kind of like they're making a statement that, hey, Caesars may sponsor us, but, you know, you can't gamble.
He's just going for the endorsement from Caesar. That would be my defense. I wanted to be in those Caesars commercials with the Peyton Mannings and, you know, all the Manning clan. All right.
Ellie Berry.
Yeah, there you go. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, take a look at some quarterback prospects. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, TriC can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. TriC is where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, this one regarding quarterbacks here in Cleveland.
Hello, my name is Steve, and I'm a lifelong Browns fan. I'm 70 years old, so that's quite a while. I've been waiting for them to get to the Super Bowl all these years, and, of course, that's been empty. However, now I guess, we've got a decent quarterback in Baker Mayfield. However, the question is, should he remain in Cleveland or not? And now Case Keenum comes into question, too. Should he remain in Cleveland or should he not? If Case Keenum was worth anything to the Browns, he would have been used in this past season when Baker was hurt. If they think a hurt Baker is better than a healthy Case Keenum, it's time to trade Keenum. Get what you can and release him. As far as Baker, with Stefanski's offense, and since he has already announced he plans to keep the play-calling duties and become the offensive coordinator as well as the head coach, my only advice to Baker Mayfield is get out while you can, while you still have a career left, because Stefanski's offense is not going to help your career.
Yikes. As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, Baker Mayfield staying. Case Keenum is a free agent. I think he's in his final year. I think Keenum's in his final year. I don't think he's coming back. I think it's a valid point. If they didn't use him last year, they probably need a different backup quarterback at this juncture.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot there. I don't think it'll be status quo quarterback, and that is likely means that they change the number 2. In the case Keenum is released, he's got 1 year left on his deal. They can save like $6 or $7 million on the salary cap. And then you bring in somebody else that's maybe younger, has a higher upside, that can either challenge Baker Mayfield or at least step in if Baker struggles again, because I don't think you can just run it back, especially how Baker played last year. I think you do need an alternative. I would push back a little bit on they wouldn't play him instead of Baker. We've talked about this a million times, Dave. If your starting quarterback says he's healthy and can play, you play him. But I will admit that probably has something to do with how the organization feels about Case Keenum and that they can upgrade at that spot. And then I would disagree with the caller about the offense isn't good for Baker. I'm not saying Stefanski's without blame, and I think the play calls could have been better, and maybe you could have had fewer, 3 tight end sets, and the system could have been better last year. But I think overall it had more to do with the play of the quarterback than it did the play calling.
Yeah, and again, there's so much riding on it for both Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. It's not like they're trying to figure out how to best fit Baker into this system. All right. If Malik Willis is there at 13, do you think the Browns seriously consider him?
I do. Now you have to weigh a couple of things, right? You have to weigh 2022 versus the long-term future, because if you could get a Garrett Wilson or Treylon Burks at number 13, right, you could say that would have an immediate impact where Malik Willis probably wouldn't. There's a chance he could sit for the entire year, or at least part of the year, because, played at Liberty, isn't considered quite ready. But there's some upside there. There's a lot of upside. He was really likable to talk to. I think he impressed teams in interviews, and he throws the ball so easily. Big arm, downfield, has zip on short throws or intermediate throws. And I do, because the Browns are obviously not committed to Baker Mayfield. They haven't talked contract extension, and they've had, almost a year to do that. And that means you got to look for alternatives. And the draft is probably the best place to look for a long-term alternative. And he's might be the best guy in the draft. So I do think that they would have to seriously consider Malik Willis at number 13. And then you have to figure out what you do receiver. Do you take one at 44? Then do you go find the best, free agent? You can figure that out. But you just can't pass up on guys you think might be long-term answers at quarterback.
Yeah, and let's take a look at the scouting report. This is from NFL. So 6'1.5", 219. You see the arms, the hand size, all those. Not great, but he is an elite athlete. Let's take a look at comps. So Jay Cutler, arm, Jalen Hurts, build, play style, upside quarterback with special parts to his game, but with no guarantee they will be assembled properly into a finished product. So even if Williams fails to reach his passing potential, running ability doesn't slump, and he has the talent to produce on the ground at a level between Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson. And again, you add all those parts together, and it's kind of what you're saying. There are some interesting, intriguing developments to his game, assets to his game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, to me, the concerns about him are not ideal height, right? We've seen Baker struggle to read stuff from the pocket. He's a little taller than Malik Willis. And he might not be ready to play right away. But when you have that running ability and you have the big arm, it feels like you can do a lot with him. And I think he's a guy that coaches would be really intrigued by. And I would be surprised if Kevin Stefanski doesn't look around and say, hey, ideally my quarterback would have more rushing ability, right? The ability we could run him if we wanted to, just make up plays when things break down. It's a trend across the league. We saw San Francisco do that when they drafted Trey Lance, right? It feels like that Kyle Shanahan wants that type of quarterback, or that, threat of a quarterback. And not that Baker's a bad athlete, but he's not Malik Willis or Lamar Jackson or Trey Lance or Jalen Hurts, right? So I could see Kevin Stefanski being really interested in a quarterback, a quote-unquote dual threat quarterback. And then the fact that he's got a big arm, it can scare defenses. And I know, I know as a play caller, you would like that too.
All right, so we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Again, this one about a quarterback who is in this year's draft.
This is Steve Lannon. Just wondered if the Browns might have any interest in Kent State quarterback Crumb as a backup, especially if he doesn't get drafted. Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at the scouting report on Dustin Crumb, similar to what we did from the Malik Willis one. So you see 6'1", size 210. Again, there's those questions. Strengths and weaknesses when you look at it. 3-year starter, became more consistent inside his offense. Fails to dazzle. Doesn't take too many chances. Takes care of the football. May not have enough in the pocket to play in the NFL. A local kid from Grafton, Midview High School. When you look at it, if not Crumb, do you think they need to take a developmental type quarterback, quote unquote, developmental guy that's young, that you see traits that you like, that you can kind of fit into what you want?
I do. Even if it's not at 13. I mean, they haven't drafted a quarterback in the last 2 years, right? Since Andrew Berry's been GM, they've not drafted a quarterback. And I'm sure you remember when Mike Holmgren got here, he was talking about drafting a quarterback every year. There's some organizations that really believe in that, because maybe you stumble upon one. And Green Bay, it becomes Mark Brunell, it becomes Matt Hasselbeck, and either the guys that started for you, or you can trade him, because that position is so valuable. So I do think the Browns need to look in that direction, whether it's early or late. And when it comes to Dustin Crumb, I don't think the Browns would spend a draft pick on him. But if nobody did, and he could be a 6th or 7th round pick, but if nobody did, I could see them bringing him in. Not ideal height either, not ideal arm strength, but he's a good athlete. I know he's smart. I went to his workout inside Lucas Oil Stadium on Thursday night, and he threw the deep ball pretty well. Now, it takes a lot for him to get it going. Like some guys throw it easy. He doesn't throw it easy, but he threw it on time and on target a lot on the go routes and the post corners. So I think he's working. I know he's working on that area of his game. And he's a guy that will get a look in the NFL. And you know how it is. If you're smart and you understand the playbook and you protect the ball, you got a chance to stick around in this league.
Yeah, and again, astrophysics major. So if he goes into a offense that is rocket science, he'll probably understand it. That's the bottom line with that. All right, Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one concerning a different part of the offense, not the quarterback. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking about Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the offense, not the quarterback.
Hey, I love you guys' show. You know what I mean? I've been a Browns fan for 57 years. And you know what? I'm tired about the hype. You get me all excited and it don't happen. I think the Browns should pick a receiver with the first 2 picks. Try to get 2 Ohio State receivers. What do you think about that? Thank you.
All right. Scott, you and I both said they need to redo the receiver room. I don't know about the first 2 picks. Depends on who they are. If they're the right 2, I wouldn't be against it. But there are other areas of the team that need upgrading pretty significantly as well.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it, Dave. I wouldn't rule it out. It's not a fan, because they will need a couple of receivers at least, right? And a couple of young receivers. But they do have other needs. And depending on what happens in agency, do they need an edge rusher? They have needs at D-tackle. So, I wouldn't rule it out, but it depends who's there. Like I said, I don't think Chris Olave is going to be there at 44. I'd be stunned if he were. But if there's not one taken at 13, I think for sure somebody will be taken at 44.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the guys that could be taken at 13, Traylon Burks. Interesting You look at the size, 6'2", 225, built like a linebacker, big hands, almost 10 inches. A.J. Brown with wiggle is the comp, big, smooth, and natural. Possesses the versatility to operate wherever you want to put him. Mismatch receiver with speed, size, strength, competitiveness. He has the ability to be a high-volume, three-level target who can start and produce in his rookie year. Having said that, didn't run real fast at the combine. I think it was a 4.55. But yeah, he seems to have football speed. You know, you put him on the field and he seems to be able to outrun the defense, which is what you want.
Yeah, there's plenty of plays on tape of him getting a hitch and going the distance and running away from people. I was really impressed with him. I listened to a lot of his interview, and then I was in the stadium for the workout. Dustin Crumb was throwing some of the passes to him, and he looks so smooth. I'm glad that that scouting report mentioned smooth, because that's how he looked to me, just running that gauntlet drill. It was like it was nothing, snatching the ball with his hands. He wears 4XL gloves. He looked really good to me. And the exciting thing about him as a prospect is he's not a finished product, because he played receiver. I mean, he played some running back at Arkansas. He played some running back in high school. He might even played some quarterback in high school. He's kind of bounced around and has never been like a full-time receiver only. And it's, you know, that's a valuable trait to have if you can take a handoff or, catch a hitch or take a jet sweep. But I think with NFL coaching and kind of refining his route running, he would get even better. I like his size. There's a lot I like about him. For me, it would be him or Garrett Wilson if either's available at 13. They'd be at the top of my receiver list.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I am absolutely with you. All right, let me give you this scenario. The guys that possibly could be at 13 are there. There isn't any crazy thing where you can jump up and get, Thibodeau or somebody like that. Everybody that possibly is there at 13, who would you like the Browns to get?
Man, that's tough. I would probably say Garrett Wilson, because I know how many people that have studied him really like his game. I've seen him play just watching Ohio State games, right, and been impressed, really impressed. And I liked what I heard from him and saw out of him at the combine. But I haven't, broken down every snap. But people that have really like the kid. So I think he would be the guy. But part of it depends on free agency, Dave, because I value edge rusher more than I do receiver. Now it's number 2 edge rusher versus number 1 receiver, so that enters into the equation. But right now, I would say Garrett Wilson.
Is there anybody that you could see if they fell to 13 that the Browns would immediate? I mean, Andrew Berry is pretty good about identifying if this guy, I want this guy and I will go get him because I think he will make us a better team.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Thibodeau, and he's an interesting guy, right? Because he's got a bunch of talent. His numbers aren't great, but he was considered for a while like the number 1 pick because he's so athletic. Now there's some questions or rumblings or rumors, whatever you want to say, about his effort level. But if the Browns felt good about him as a person, player, effort-wise, and he started to fall, that's a guy that's the guy to me that jumps out.
All right. And the other thing, are you? It doesn't sound like you are absolutely positively convinced it's going to be wide receiver at 13. It's going to be Andrew Berry kind of weighing everything and saying this guy can help us most?
Yeah. Do you know what the hold up for me is? I think philosophically the Browns don't value receiver as high as other positions. And neither do I, right? Quarterback, pass rusher, offensive tackle, cornerback. To me, all carry greater value. Not the receiver's not important. I just think when the Browns look at it, they think, hey, we can find one in the second round. Or that's just how I feel that they look at it. Nobody's told me that. So that's why I kind of am reserved about saying, yes, they're going to go all in on a receiver at 13. Now, they've surprised us before. They traded up to take a linebacker, and I didn't think they do either. But they did that for JOK. So I think there could be extenuating circumstances, which means they need 2 receivers. So go get one at 13. But that's what's holding me up from saying, yes, I guarantee they'll take a receiver at 13.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. A viewer with a trade idea. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as brownzone.com, and I continue talking Browns. We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, this one with a trade idea.
I wanted your thoughts on the following idea. I think we should wait and see on Baker. It seems like the best option for next year. But we should do all we can do in free agency to build the wide receiver room. But since this draft is deep at the wide receiver position and the 2023 draft is not, how about trading this year's number 13 pick for a 2023 first rounder and a day 2 pick this year? That will give the Browns 4 day 2 picks in 2022, and we could pick up a decent receiver like the caliber of Sky Moore or somebody like that, or maybe trade for Calvin Ridley. But then we'd still have draft picks to do what we had planned to do with the other positions like defensive line. The main reason is that I think that would give enough draft capital next year if Baker didn't work out, and provide the flexibility to go get a quarterback, whether it's in the draft or a trade. Just want to know what you think. Thanks.
All right, as always, appreciate the voicemails. And Scott, I understand where the voicemailer is going with trying to get multiple first-round picks in the event you have to try to go and get a quarterback next year. I don't know this is the year to do it, and the reason is you feel pretty good about this roster, and you don't want to trade away. 13 should be somebody that impacts this roster pretty significantly, I think.
Yeah, but it's an interesting thought. It really is, because if you don't have your long-term answer quarterback, you're not going to get it drafting in the, you might not even get it at 13 some years, right? But you're not going to get it drafting at 22 or 26, usually at least. So I understand that thought process. Now it would have to be coupled with finding receivers other ways, right? You have to maybe stock up on veterans in free agency as opposed to relying on the draft. You would have to bring in a backup quarterback, like you mentioned, a Mariota or a Bridgewater, or Trubisky, even though it sounds like he's going to get a starting job somewhere. Somebody to push Baker so you don't have to rely on a rookie to do it this year, right? You have to have kind of your other bases covered in order to do it. But he's right. If you're going to try to get a top, 5 or a quarterback in the top 5 or 8 of the draft, you need multiple first-round picks to be able to do that.
Yeah, and Calvin Ridley, obviously the voicemailer called earlier today before Ridley was suspended for gambling, so that's not an option. What about Sky Moore? That's a guy that we heard kind of rose up. Some people locally liked him and had them in their mock drafts to the Browns later. Sounds like he's kind of flying up draft boards.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he is. It's just a matter of what's the sweet spot, right? You try not to reach for a guy, but if you really want him, can you count that he'll be there later? It's going to be interesting what they do with this receiver room, because I don't think they're tied to a body type, right? I mean, really, the only certainties are Donovan Peoples-Jones and Anthony Schwartz, because I don't expect Jarvis Landry to be back. So then, you had 3 or 4 spots at receiver, and how do you go about filling those? And what, like I said, what body types you're looking for? You're looking for big, a possession guy. You're looking for a smaller, quick guy. And I think the Browns are kind of open to everything right now.
Yeah, that kind of My guess is they'd try to get multiple guys. Go get yourself a big target. Go get yourself a guy that can run and kind of break down defenses and try to find as many different ways to threaten defenses with your wide receivers. Is that kind of the line of thought you had as well?
Yeah, I think so. And you look at who you have. You have Donald Peoples-Jones as a bigger guy with some deep ability, but not really quickness or burst. You have Anthony Schwartz with the sprinter speed. So I think you kind of find guys with maybe particular skills you can exploit. If it's Treylon Burks, who is a bigger guy, and you can do a lot of different things with them. Is it Chris Olave, who just flies, but probably isn't a go over the middle guy. He's not a big guy. You got to worry about from a physical holding up standpoint. He's thinner than you'd like him to be. But yeah, you find the guys with special traits and then try to accentuate those positives and have enough well-rounded guys that the defense doesn't know exactly what you're going to do when you put a guy on the field.
We know Andrew Berry's going to try to upgrade this roster all over the place. Is offensive line kind of an under-the-radar position you think he's looking to upgrade?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I think they're set in the interior. I guess that depends on if J.C. Treader, if they decide to try to save some cap space there and turn it over to Nick Harris at center. I would not do that. If they did that, then maybe you'd probably have to go find somebody else on the interior as a backup. But, I think with Michael Dunn and Blake Hance and Nick Harris and Treader and Keller and Bitonio, they're fine on the interior. To me, it's all about finding that legitimate swing tackle, right? That is probably better than James Hudson III right now. And that if Jack Conklin's not ready week one coming off the torn patellar, this guy can start. And I think it needs to be a veteran. Jedrick Wills struggles again and gets hurt again like he did in 2021, then this guy can play left tackle. Kind of what Chris Hubbard did in 2020, I just don't know if you can, and I love Chris Hubbard, I just don't know if you can trust Hubbard given that the last 2 years ended in significant injuries for him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. These are the biggest risers from the combine, according to ESPN, on the offensive line. And this guy in the interior, so Browns probably set there. You see Juergens from Nebraska, and Nebraska offensive linemen are kind of like Iowa offensive linemen. They're usually pretty good. And then another guy that kind of catches your eyes from the Mid-American Conference, 6'6", 303-pound tackle, Bernard Raymond. And again, it'll be interesting to see, do the Browns look to kind of bolster that? Offensive lineman, you probably draft them, day 3 anyway, because as we found out this year, Browns offensive line was really good, and you can never have enough offensive linemen because they get beat up a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the fact is, Jack Conklin's only under contract for 1 more year. So, you have to have a long-term plan too. So if they love the guy in the, 4th round on, and said, hey, maybe this guy can be a right tackle 2 years from now. Not that James Hudson can't be. I'm just saying if you wanted to add to the pile and say, hey, we don't expect to pay Jack Conklin another big contract, then yeah, you could certainly find someone like that, a MAC guy with a lot of upside, would make some sense.
All right, we've mentioned the combine and offensive tackles. This one's pretty good. So Myles Garrett was watching some of the drills, and he's watching this, and his response to this is, good luck with that. And yeah, I don't think that move is going to necessarily work in the NFL, and especially I don't think I've ever seen Myles Garrett have that done to him. So kind of funny with Myles Garrett watching some of the drills here.
Yeah, it is. I think that Myles has about 40 pounds on that edge rusher that's trying to go past that guy.
Yeah, and that move might work in college, but yeah, it's not going to be too many guys that works on. The other thing that we're going to take a look at before we let you go, this one's really interesting. So Nick Chubb, first running back in NFL history to average at least 5.0 yards per carry on 100-plus carries each of his first 4 seasons. That according to Sharp Football. And, that just goes to show how good number 24 for the Browns is carrying the football.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, I think you kind of take it for granted a little bit. mean, he finished second in the league in rushing, right? He had 1,256 yards, and it felt like a down year for Nick because he missed a couple games with injuries. The Browns obviously struggled from a team aspect, didn't get to where the expectations were. But, I mean, he's a top, 2, 3, 4, 5 back in this league, and I don't think there's any reason to think that he won't be for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So, yeah, I mean, we talk all the time, and we should, about what the Browns need, but they have a big-time running back in a big-time running game. They just need to figure out a way to get that pass game closer to the run game.
Yeah, I would agree. And you know what? A lot of times people will say, yeah, well, look at that offensive line. And, yeah, the offensive line is good at run blocking. That's still a really talented – I almost think Nick Chubb gets penalized because of the Browns' offensive line in some people's minds.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And there's some of, it goes the other way too. I think Nick Chubb makes some of the offensive linemen look good, right? I mean, obviously Wyatt Teller's got the pancake blocks. We know how good Joe Bitonio is. But when you look back and say he's run for X number of yards, you assume the line play is good. And I think it works both ways.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can read him on brownzone.com on the internet. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, especially after you've been at the Combine last week. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrak, again, you can read him on the internet, brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking a little bit of Browns. We will be joined by Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, TriC can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. TriC is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one wants to improve special teams.
Hi, this is E.T. again. I wanted to know, is there someone great to see on the draft you think that the Browns can add to be a returner for us? We haven't had a dynamic returner since Josh Cribbs. And I wonder how much would that help the team overall and the special teams game. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Appreciate it, E.T., and as always, we appreciate the voicemails. Let's welcome in Kevin Arnold, Voice of the Land podcast. Kevin, I'm with them. If we can find a kick returner and upgrade that, I will say the returners pretty much across the league, it's not what it – there aren't as many dynamic ones as they used to be. The rules have changed a little bit to cut down the kick games and injuries on them. Christian Kirk is a guy that has returned kicks and been successful. Do any come to mind with you that would be interesting as far as kick returners go?
Well, I mean, Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella, who has requested a trade and comes from Northeast Ohio, would be kick return options. If you're going to go in the free agency route, Bayless Jones Jr., who ran a 4.32 in the 40-yard dash at the Combine from Tennessee. I think Mel Kiper has him as the 5th best returner, but someone that's kind of talked about, if you look at a lot of the different boards and rumors about kick returners, if you do, kind of going into that. But you kind of said it there, Dave. Having those dynamic kick returners, if you can get one, you're kind of in a better realm as a team for yourself because they're not as prevalent as they once were. The Devin Hesters and the Josh Cribbses of the world just aren't really there with a lot more touchbacks. I think in 2020, the NFL set a record for over 60% touchbacks on kickoff. So you're not getting as many opportunities. And, Anthony Schwartz, Demetric Felton, those were kind of your top 2 kick returners and punt returners last year. And, they're long. I think Anthony Schwartz at a long of 35, but it just didn't seem to impact. Dave, overall, the special teams didn't have a good impact. And I think before we start talking about who can be the kick returner, who is going to have an impact on this team, I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but you got to look at kicker first because you missed a lot of points. You could have kicked more field goals, could have attempted more, but when they came, you didn't convert. Those were lost points out there on the field.
Yeah, and about the only part of special teams that was good was the coverage. And I'm not minimizing it. That's an important part of it. But the other side of it, the return game that gets you better field position, I certainly understand where our voicemailer was getting at. All right, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, this one with some ideas about the first couple of picks for the Browns.
Is there any way possible we could get Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, even if we had to give up a couple draft picks this year and next year? Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right. Again, we appreciate all the voicemails. Kevin, I don't think there's any way. I was kind of hoping Olave would slide. That ain't happening. I don't think he's going to make it out of the, he might make it to 20, 22, something like that. I don't think he's going any further down the first round than that.
No, but that voicemail is definitely speaking more of my language. More than the kick returners, the wide receivers, especially Ohio State wide receivers like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. Boy, wouldn't that be a dream to have both of those guys and how impactful they were for the Buckeyes over their career and just the smoothness that they run routes with, but kind of going up and getting those 50-50 balls all the time. I just, like you, Dave, I don't see a way to get both, but getting one of them to have that kind of impact on your team, one of those guys among the other top wide receivers at 13 would do wonders for this team and for this passing game.
All right, let's put this to you. Assuming, everybody falls where it should, who would you like at 13?
Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is the guy. Now, I, to be honest, as a Buckeyes fan, I tended to like Chris Olave a little bit more. But for what the Browns need, Olave was running open and running those post routes down the field where he was catching those beautifully thrown balls over his career. But kind of the over-the-shoulder catches still had good separation. You see a lot more separation in the college game. You saw a little bit more athleticism, maybe getting up over guys from Garrett Wilson. I know that people were talking and going on Twitter saying he didn't grade out well at the Combine on the jumps and the broad jumps, stuff like that. But again, it's 2 days in shorts versus a guy that's out there on the field in pads that is kind of shown at the highest level against some of the highest competition to go out there. So for what the Browns need, I would go to the Garrett Wilson route, although I do like Chris Olave a little bit more. He'd be 1A and Garrett Wilson 1B in terms of Buckeye lore. For the Browns, 1A Garrett Wilson, pretty close behind Chris Olave, but you kind of want one of those bigger wide receivers if you're not going to go to Ohio State wide receiver like Treylon Burks or Drake London. Yeah,
I would like a bigger-bodied guy to give Baker Mayfield, at least this year it'll be Baker Mayfield, by all indications, a bigger target. All right, outside of the obvious, which we'll say defensive line, wide receivers, what areas of this team, what are you prioritizing as an area that needs to be upgraded for the Browns?
Kind of already mentioned it, Dave. Kicker, and it's really special teams overall. And I know they got rid of their assistant special teams coach, but right? Prefer in that special teams unit has got to show more, and they've got to get more out of the kicker position. Now, when they made the change from Jamie Gillen to Colquitt, they got a little bit more separation in terms of flipping the field from their punter. But kicker, you're going to have to score points at times. Kevin Stefanski at times is going to have to stop going for it on fourth down and just take the points. But he's also going to have a kicker that he feels confident in instead of looking at and just continuing to go for it. He's got to have a kicker on the other side, not just in September and October when it's a little bit warmer and you get those nicer days down there at First Energy Stadium, but in November and when it matters in December and January, trying to make a push for the playoffs. The wind is whipping. You got the grapple. You got the snow, the rain coming down. It's cold. You have that flag that Phil Dawson used to look at on one end of the field where the wind really whips. You need a kicker that can kind of utilize that and just kick through any sort of weather. You have the kicker from Baltimore, and yes, he's kind of the anomaly. He's kicking through anything, but Justin Tucker is kind of the exception to the rule. You need a guy that's going to at least do 75% of what Justin Tucker can do in the AFC North, because games are going to be decided by 3 or less points more often than not.
Yeah, and a lot of the Browns' close games, if they had a guy that threatened it at the kicker position, that would definitely help. Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavaliers' nice win over the Toronto Raptors. We will hear from J.B. Bickerstaff talking Cavs on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and so is the job market. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, TriC can help with tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. Register now for online and on-campus classes. TriC is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. A nice win over the Toronto Raptors yesterday, but it did come at a cost. So the Cavs beat the Raptors, but they lose Jared Allen after the first quarter. J.B. Bickerstaff talked about the win and doing it without Jared Allen for most of the game.
We fought their pressure. They're a very athletic, long, handsy defensive team, and they pressure you and they try to get you back on your heels and force you to be uncomfortable. But you got to meet force with force, and I thought we did more of that.
And how did you guys really overcome being without him in such a big game?
It's tough, obviously, but I felt like we had a bunch of guys that stepped up. You look at what Evan did out there on both ends of the floor, Lowry moving over to play some power forward, Kevin playing, Dean Wade coming in, playing with size. So we had a bunch of guys that come in, and Ed Davis gave us great minutes. OG came off the bench and played well and helped us, spell guys and still be effective. So, we threw a ton of bodies at it, and that's the only way you can replace a guy like Jay.
All right, Kevin Arnold, the update on Jared Allen, it's a fractured middle finger. He is out indefinitely, no timetable yet for his return. Let's unpack. Evan Mobley was really good in his absence, and that's maybe an underrated thing. Evan Mobley was like, all right, you need me to kind of switch gears? I'll switch gears. And that's been impressive about the rookie.
Yeah, he doesn't – no moment seems too big for him, and it seemed kind of there around the All-Star break and just after, their rookie wall. He's used to playing 30, 35 games in a season. Now you're going straight to 82 games. So you're going to have those ebbs and flows for a young guy. But a guy like that the moment doesn't get too big, he didn't allow a stretch of games to mount up to 10, 15 games. No. It was 3 or 4 games not playing well. You saw Darius Garland come back, and yes, DG is the PG. He is the leader of this team, and he didn't lose a step scoring-wise when he came back, but the Cavs still weren't winning. Evan Mobley not scoring, not playing like we had seen him the whole season was a major factor in that, and him getting back and playing and kind of taking some of that load that Jared Allen would kind of bring to the floor, kind of bringing a little extra yesterday and seeing more of the Evan Mobley we've seen all season long. I think that kind of can help this Cavs team stay in the position they are, and hopefully Jared Allen can come back sooner rather than later. And it's not a Chris Paul situation where it's a 6 to 8 week type thing, and now you're bringing him back right around playoff time as long as you stay in those top 6 seeds.
So the Cavs are the 6th seed, the Raptors 7. The difference is now 3 games. They also swept the season series, so they hold the tiebreaker. 8th spot's one to keep an eye on. That's the Nets. And the Nets could be putting some things together as they have been revamped. But right now, their hold on 6 is better than it has been, and they're even closer. They're closer to 4 than they are 7 is the good news. 4 gets you a first-round home game. The other thing that's kind of interesting, Karis LeVert, and they need him back because he brings an element to this team that is very much needed, and he's probably getting closer. The timetable was a week, so you're getting closer to where LeVert will likely be able to suit back up.
And in these playoff-type atmospheres that you're going to start to see, the Cavs have a tough stretch of games against playoff caliber, if not playoff solidified teams here in the month of March. There's going to be times like we saw last night. Yeah, Toronto is long and athletic, and Darius Garland and some of the other guards had a harder time kind of getting through. There was definitely some blitzes, some traps in the corners. So Toronto kind of showed those looks. You hope that a young team grows from seeing film against a defense like that. The more you see, the more the wiser you are in the NBA as this team continues to grow. But you're going to need, when the offense breaks down and you're kind of swinging the ball around, you're just not hitting shots, you need a guy that can go fill it up, go get his own. And that's why they brought Karis LeVert in. When the offense breaks down or gets stagnant, he can still go get a bucket, just like DG can. The more guys you have like that on the floor, that kind of helps stem the tide. When Toronto went on that 11-0 run, 13-1 run, you needed someone else to kind of maybe keep that to 8-0 or 9-0. Now, at the end of the day, it didn't matter, but better teams than Toronto will extend those 11-0 runs quickly, out to like 20 points in a league that's 3-point shooting. The playoff teams are going to hit you quick. So you need guys that can go fill it up when the offensive ball movement just isn't quite there like it wasn't last night.
So next 3 games, Pacers, they got to win that one. Then they have Bulls and Heat back-to-back. Those are 2 of the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. So you got to win the games you're supposed to win, and then you try to split, the others with the Heat and the Bulls.
Yeah, you want to see an effort like you saw in Philadelphia, but you got to go win a few games like that. You're not going to win them all, and especially not having Jared Allen, it's going to make things tougher. But it seems like when this Cavs team really has their backs up against the wall and guys are out, that's when that dog mentality that they talked about early in the season really comes out, and guys step up. And you have veterans like Ed Davis who, when their number is called and when they are needed, they will come through for you. So again, tough stretch of games, tough opponents. You can win a couple of those, especially on the road. That just makes you more battle tested and ready for the playoffs. And this team really needs not necessarily a long playoff run, but you hope it goes long. As a Cavs fan, they need to get to the playoffs Because a team like Memphis, they've been there, they've been in the playoffs, and now that young team is ascending in the Western Conference. That is what can do wonders for this Cavs team and continue to contend years down the road by getting in this year.
Kevin Arnold from the Voice of the Land podcast. Kevin, as always, man, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dave. Always appreciate it.
All right, Kevin Arnold, listen to him, Voice of the Land podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock, right here on Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.